There's 4 million cases of COVID in the US. The infection rate is doubling. The RNC cancels the convention. Yeah, Trump says no convention. Really? Meanwhile, in Portland, there's a civil war. I mean, you would literally think we're like at war in one state in our country. Kanye's in, his bipolar's on, he and Kim might be out, and all those benefits you've been getting are about to get cut off. So you might think it's all coming to like hell in a handbag, despite my beautiful backdrop on a lake in Wisconsin. But it's not. This show is all about predictions, COVID, the election, and cancel culture. Get in on it with me. I got mine. I want to hear yours. I'm Rob Nelson, and this is Rob Nelson Live.
Meet Rob Nelson, talk show host.
Because you got the 70s thing going there. My name's Rob Nelson. I used to have a talk show on Fox, a show on Fox News, but news in America is so produced. I don't care if you think it's left, right, center, fake. You passed tougher legislation to deal with the paparazzi after what happened with you and your family.
I think it's very important that we focus on rebuilding.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show. I'm Rob Nelson. This is Rob Nelson Live. And yeah, this is not a green screen behind me. This is not my studio in Los Angeles. I am in the house I grew up in Wisconsin. There's a beautiful lake behind me. That's real. It's all real. And, you know, sitting here in this pastoral, beautiful setting, you would think everything in the world is just peachy keen. That's like a phrase from like the 70s or something. But it's not, right? I mean, look around you. Everybody doesn't know what's up anymore. I mean, just when you think it's safe to go outside, they send you back inside. Just when you think maybe you're getting used to what's happened, we go backwards. It doesn't matter what it is. Sports are trying to open. You know, baseball started. The first pitch was thrown, the first games. Basketball in the bubble, getting ready, preseason, about to start the shortened run. Football, forget about that. I actually remember talking to Al Michaels right at the beginning of all this, the NFL, Monday Night Football commentator for years. And he said, 50-50 chance football doesn't come back. It's looking like the 50 not. Schools open, don't open. 4 million cases of coronavirus in the U.S. I mean, that sounds scary. The rapid rate of infection is increasing and increasing. Terrifying. People are scared. I want to start with COVID. You know, fear may be the biggest, most threatening thing in this whole thing. People, I said, are scared, and you get why. I mean, you read the media, and I'm not saying it's no, they're making those numbers up. There's people who are like, you know, I'm over reporting. Hospitals may be tagging too much because anything, you know, they code everything. So if they may have 6 other things and COVID could be one of them gets coded, but that's not accounting for the vast majority. The 140,000+ deaths are real, give or take, some that may be overcoded. The 4 million cases are real. Now, you go, okay, well, they're real because of increased testing. Maybe, somewhat, sure, of course. Increased testing leads to more cases being found positive. But don't kid yourself. It's not all increased testing. It's people went out. People went back to their lives. I said this at the very beginning of the pandemic on this show. We were in a dilemma because we locked the country down with a relatively small number of cases because they were afraid of how infectious this disease was, and they were right. And now they're trying to let people back out. When you let people back out, you're going to recreate. People still have it. You're going to create the spread. It was inevitable. They knew it was inevitable. They kind of lied to the American public a little bit, if you think about it, because they made people feel like just wait a couple months and we'll be okay. Trump didn't help by saying this thing was going to like blow up and disappear. Warmer weather helps. Let's be honest. The sun, the ultraviolet rays, all the experts are admitting now being outside better than being inside. But it's never going to just go away. We were going to leave our homes and we were going to get infected. It was always going to be the case until this thing is completely stomped out, which could be never. I mean, you have a vaccine eventually in a year, it's going to tamper it down. But the reality is we were always going to face the reality of when people went back out, it was going to create an infection spread. And it was going to go all over. And that's why they're saying we're seeing tons of cases of young people getting it. Not dying, just getting it. Well, yeah, because young people went out. What's a little frustrating on the COVID thing is if you read the media, for the most part, the narrative you're going to get is that it's just because we've gone back to our lives that everything's gone hell in a handbag, and we should have stayed in. Realistically, you couldn't keep people in forever. People needed to get back to their lives. The unemployment benefits are running out. Evictions are going to start. People are like, I got to get back to work. It's easy to say, well, people going to the beach, going to parties, of course, that's part of it. But there's an article in BuzzFeed this week talked all about how California, where I'm from, was just exploding. And it was all because we'd gone back to work and because people were socializing and going out. In the entire article, this was 2 days ago, not a single mention about protests, not a mention. They had not even maybe protests were part of it. Millions of people protested on the streets in Los Angeles alone, thousands and thousands and thousands. And the whole idea is, why they think going out is risky is because you're suddenly not with your family anymore. You're suddenly engaged with other people, right? Well, that's what a protest was times 1,000. Yet no mention that that's causing the spread. Now, that gets into the politics of this all in the media narrative. But the point is, a lot of people going, wait a minute. You're telling me I can't go out, but you're not saying that's part of the problem. So do I trust you how bad the problem is? But the reality is, it's happening. We're getting infected. It was always going to happen. The problem is how scared we are of that. We have been led to be so terrified, so afraid that nobody knows what to do. People are terrified for their health. They're terrified for their kids. We walk around with our masks in complete and utter fear. Or other people are like, F it, I'm not wearing a mask, which becomes pretty obnoxious. Like, put a mask on when you go into Target. How hard is that? So how bad is this disease? I don't have all the answers. I do know it's a highly infectious disease. I do know it's a huge asymptomatic, up to 45%, meaning you have no symptoms, but you still have it. And we know that the death rate is dropping as the more numbers go up. We know New York's numbers drop, they believe, because they think 25% of New York's been infected, just not all went to the hospital. But how scary is it? Well, Dr. Fauci, Anthony Fauci, who's the leading epidemiologist, the media loves to point out when he and Trump clash. And yet, lately, the last few days, he's been saying, look, Trump and I have a good relationship. And he doesn't, he's only lying when he says that. He's not lying when he says anything else. But the media is like, the minute he says, look, we disagree about a lot, but our relationship is a good one. He does his thing, I do mine, and we're working together. The media is like, oh, he's just saying that. It's like, he's only just saying that when he has to. But here's what Dr. Fauci said yesterday about how dangerous this disease is on a podcast. Bruce, can we play that clip?
What do you see COVID-19 looking like in the lineup of infectious diseases? Is it going to be our worst killer now?
No, I would say that I don't think it ultimately is going to be our worst killer, because so many people have asymptomatic infection, 20 to 45% of people. It certainly is a killer of those who are the senior citizens and those with underlying conditions. Occasionally, you have an exception. We have a perfectly young, healthy person has very serious disease and died. That's a minority of that. I think with a combination of good public health measures, a degree of global herd immunity, and a good vaccine, I think when you put all three of those together, I think we will get very good control of this. We may not eradicate it, but I think we will bring it down to such a low level that we will not be in the position that we're in right now. Occasionally, you have an exception. We have a perfectly young, healthy person has very serious disease and died. That's a minority of that.
So there you have it. And I repeated that point for a reason. Occasionally, you have a very young, healthy person who gets it and dies. You'd never know that, everybody. You would never know it. Because the minute someone does, it gets blasted all over the national media. And it scares the heck out of everyone. I see it in my friends, my family. It's terrifying to people. And I get it. People want to be safe, and it's an unknown. You have no control. But the media misrepresents it. They drive home that narrative. Even when Dr. Fauci's saying, this is a minority, it's occasional. It's a statistically tiny number. Your kids are fine. It's sad that old people die, but unlike most flus and viruses, it kills older people more than young people. The normal flu killed a lot of younger people. So here's my point on this. Fear. Why do they drive fear at us? And I'll tell you, there's 3 reasons, and these are worth remembering. Because fear for the media makes money. When the media has you afraid, you watch the news. You watch to hear the next scary story. You watch to see what's next. And the more they drive that fear, the more you watch, the more money they make. It's sad. I'm not saying every journalist out there is, but there's a certain power and a trip in delivering the fear message. Second part of that is the politicians like fear, both sides. Donald Trump won on a campaign of scaring people. The irony is that today Donald Trump is the one saying, we're all going to be okay. We're all going to be okay. And it's the other side saying, oh my God, are you kidding? Well, look at how bad it is. He's crazy. He's ignoring the realities. We're all in trouble. The other side is playing on fear right now. Fear wins elections. And it's sad. But fear also keeps people under control. Every authoritarian regime in the world used fear to keep people under control. They didn't use like prosperity. They used fear. When people are afraid, they do what they're told. Trust me, in California, you see it. The more they scare people, the more people are like, I'll do whatever you say. I'll do whatever you say. There's the exceptions, because we are a country founded on a notion of individual liberty and freedom. So a whole lot of people react to that fear by going, I will not. And that's why you have the crazy mass conflicts. People are like, why? Because people feel afraid and they're tired of being told to be afraid, and they react the other way by being, I'm not going to do it. F you, I'm not doing it. I refuse. I don't care. They get crazy about it. I'm not defending it, but it's the counter reaction to the fear. Fear, fear, fear. The more afraid we are, the more we'll do what they tell us. I'm not being a kook about this. That's how power works. And the third piece is corporations. Corporations benefit from fear too. No, they don't try to scare you. They try to comfort you in your fear. Watch any commercial right now for any big company. It's all the same message. We are safe. We are a haven in a time of crisis. We are here for you. Subaru figured it out a long time before the virus, before COVID. Subaru was when you buy a Subaru, what are you buying? Other than it's a safety car, you're buying love. You're buying something that you can have through your whole family, your kids, pass it on, keep them safe. Corporations win off fear because they can sell safety. So we need to be careful, because the fear can get us way more than the disease. The disease we can't stop. We're going to try. We'll mitigate it. As Fauci said, we will mitigate it. A vaccine, social distancing practices, and general good health measures, and a herd immunity. No one likes to say that. He said a herd immunity. Enough people have to get it for us to be okay. But we will. My COVID prediction, we're not going down south and farther, farther, farther. We may tank the economy in the process of our conflict, but we're not. We're actually going to pull through this in 6 months if we can just keep our shit together, stop dividing so much, but I don't know if we can do that. I don't know if the politicians can do that. I don't know if the warring factions, cultural factions can do it, but we could actually unify and get through this. Quickly, to the cancel culture, because I want to get people in on this conversation, but I want to lay it all out there. Cancel culture. Actually, I want to first show you something just quickly. Bruce, we have a couple stills, right? Do we have a still of Anthony Fauci at the Nationals game? Throwing out a ball. Well, he's sitting in the stands. He's sitting in the stands with his mask off. He's at the Nationals game. He throws out the opening pitch, and then he sits in the stands, and he's not wearing a mask. Bruce, do we have that shot? Can we throw it up, the picture?
Yeah, I'm pulling it up right now. I'm pulling it up right now.
Bruce has a great studio back there. We'll talk to him in a minute. So he's sitting in the stands with his mask off between his wife and a good friend. And it goes up on Twitter, and a pretty high profile Twitter personality says, why are you not wearing a mask after all your talk? Now, granted, he's in an empty stadium, but it's got 2 people on either side, and it's smiling and laughing without a mask on. And his answer is, well, I do wear a mask in public, but I was having a drink of water. Now, I don't know if we got the picture or not. If you can see the picture, it'd be great. But because it's clear he's not. Bruce, we got the pic, or we got to miss it?
No,
we got it.
I'm pulling it up right now.
All right. So I want you to look at the pic, because it's so obvious that he is not having a drink of water. And I'm okay with that. He's just chilling out with his mask down for a few minutes, laughing with his wife and a good friend. And my point is, most of the people in power, they're not living in as much fear as most of the rest of the people are. And you need to think about that. There's a reason why stories keep popping up, other than Trump, of people, high profile media personalities, celebrities, politicians. They do their best to hide that. Not doing the rules the right way. I'm not saying they're flaunting it in a way that's like dangerously offensive to the masses. I'm saying they're living their lives because they know the truth. They're not afraid. They want us to be afraid. And I'm not saying that like some crazy conspiracy guy. I'm not a big conspiracy guy, but I also am a believer in the reality, the real politics of life. They will make us afraid, even as they are not afraid. And I'm not saying Dr. Fauci's trying to do that. I think he's doing what he does. He's an epidemiologist. His job is to identify a disease and the health factors around it and focus on that. But the reality is he's sitting there feeling fine with his wife and a good friend with his mask off for a little while. And again, I don't have the picture to show you. I don't know what happened, but he's not drinking a glass of water. He's chilling. I'm sure he had a glass of water, but it's okay. It's not a terrible, there it is. See him, it's in the middle, and he's just laughing, and he doesn't have water anywhere near him. And that's nothing wrong with that. Nothing at all. It's just we all need to live with that same thing and not freak out the next time you see somebody without a mask on and think they're going to give it to you if they just walk by you. Okay, so quickly to cancel culture. Portland is on fire. It's a crazy mess in Portland right now. And it's odd because it's all started around Black Lives Matter, and that movement is still moving. The MLB players, baseball players, what they do? They all took a knee together before the national anthem. They had a black thing to go around the baseline, kind of a cool thing. But BLM is going to continue to a degree because we've already started to forget about BLM. It's been a few weeks, and that's our media cycle. We've already started to move on. Portland hasn't. But Portland's got nothing to do with BLM. First of all, there are like almost no black people in Portland. Portland's like as white as can be. Yet they're all out there protesting like madmen, throwing shit at the buildings and lighting stuff on fire and then running away yelling Black Lives Matter. And it's kind of funny and sad. And then Trump sends in federal troops and makes them even more crazy. Now, he sends the troops in, people get crazy. They fight with the troops. The mayor comes out to talk to people and say, good for you for being here. We're the front line standing up against the feds. And then people just boo him and say tear gas him. The very protesters he's like encouraging are like booing him for not being protester enough, I guess. But it's kind of hysterical because he's out there being tear gassed, saying, I'm here with you. And people are like tear gas him and throwing stuff at him. Meanwhile, the Portland police declared a riot scene right afterward. The media focus is on the feds. Trump's Gestapo. It's like, again, fear. It's not Trump's Gestapo. It's some federal agents going into a city that's literally had riots and fighting. Riots. Violence and riots for like 40 days. Supposedly about Black Lives Matter, although there's hardly any black people in Portland. And most of the big companies in Portland probably don't have a high number of black people working for them, certainly not in upper levels, but they just continue. It's like people want chaos and unrest on one side. It feeds that anchor, that fear, that lashing out. But we're not going to be able to cancel everybody. You can't just keep canceling everybody. And by the way, before you get crazy on the mask thing, McDonald's and Chipotle today just said they require masks. Who didn't know? I didn't know. I thought McDonald's probably required masks like 2 months ago. Just now today saying, okay, we're going to require masks in all our stores. And by the way, if you don't wear a mask, they're going to offer you one. And if you still refuse, they got a little waiting area for you to stand inside and they'll bring your food to you. It's like, we'll take care of you. All our customers are important. It's almost comical. The mask thing took a while. Dr. Fauci said we didn't need masks in the middle of March, early March. They figured it out. Everybody needs to take a break on it, but we can't. We're going to cancel anybody who doesn't fit the narrative we want. The cancel culture drive will wear out because it's going to fall in on itself. The best example of that is Yale University. Did you know Yale is named after a guy whose name is Yale? And he was a slave trader. He wasn't just a slaveholder. He was worse than a slaveholder. He was a trader. He traded slaves, literally in the commerce business of trading human beings for sale. And yet, Yale University is named after him. Now, are they going to take Yale University's name down? Because they're taking Woodrow Wilson's name off Princeton buildings. Woodrow Wilson was president during World War I, and he was a bit of a racist, not slave trader, but he had desegregation in the federal government and offices, all that stuff. So he was a racist, no question. As I've said, almost every single leader we had who was white for the last 200 years had an element of racism in him. Kennedy was a racist. Johnson was a mega racist. But Yale University, take it down. They can't. Cancel culture will implode on itself because you can't cancel everything that's ever had any connection to anything bad or connected to something culturally inappropriate in our past, because it would be canceling everything, including the ground we live on, the houses we live in, the schools we go to, the stores we shop at, the merchandise we buy. We'd have to throw it all out and start over. Ain't happening. My prediction on cancel culture, it's going to wear itself out with a bigger backlash of the anti-cancel culture. The I'm sick of cancel culture will boomerang. We're boomerang way faster than we used to. Boomerangs used to take a couple of years, and now they're going in like 4-month cycles. We are going to have a culture, cancel culture boomerang that shatters it back. And it's going to be a little bit of a civil war of people going, I'm done with you telling me I can't say stuff. I will say it. And by the way, George Orwell, who wrote 1984 and warned of like the terrible takeover, people like to say, you know, Trump's Orwellian, which he's not, said basically the single greatest danger to liberty is silencing people who say things you don't want to hear. We need to let people say what we don't want to hear. To the last prediction, the election, and then I want to get people in. The polls have it. Even the betting odds. I think betting odds are better than polls. Look at Vegas betting odds. You know, they have betting odds on the presidency. That's way better, much more reliable. They're not perfect, but they're more reliable than polls. They got Trump's losing at this point. The bets are moving. It's hedging away. Surefire win 3 months ago. Trump is effed up on a lot of things. He lacks compassion, or at least able to show it. And in a time of a pandemic, that's huge. He's made missteps everywhere, and he's got a grudge on his shoulder, chip, which I don't blame, because they've been after him for 3 years for all kinds of BS, including the hoax of the Russian. And now it is clearly a hoax, by the way. If you thought the Russian thing was real, don't miss the news part where all the back documents are coming out that show what led up to it. And it's not conspiracy anymore either, you know? It's Peter Strzok, who got fired, main architect on the Mueller thing, the whole deal, saying right at the beginning, we don't have any evidence Trump officials or campaign people were messing with the Russians. But yet they launched the investigation anyway, and it went from there. So Trump's got a chip on his shoulder. The media hates him. The Democrats want him out, but he's messed up too. And he's sliding because his whole thing was the economy, and it's tanking. It's not his fault, but it's tanking. It's on his watch. Kanye's in. And Kanye's an odd character. Yeah, he's bipolar, and yeah, he's a little cuckoo. He's a genius, though. And his politics are kind of libertarian. He's a mix. He's like me. Like, there's no one left or right. He's pro-LGBTQ. He's pro-Black Lives Matter. But he thinks black people being told they have to vote for a Democrat is like the worst form of racism there is. He's against Planned Parenthood, which, by the way, is a racist organization, and I don't know how that keeps getting missed. Margaret Sanger, who started it and still has her name all over it, was a blatant racist. She wanted reproductive centers to limit black people. She put them in black neighborhoods. She wanted to put people who were poor, illiterate, drug users, you know, in farms. She literally wanted to control so people couldn't be born if they had disabilities, and she wanted to limit the number of black people. And that's why 80% of Planned Parenthoods ended up in black neighborhoods. She was a racist. But Kanye's against that, and he's very pro-life. You know, he's pro-China, which I totally disagree with. But he's a weird mix. He wants to restructure government. He's not crazy. He's just a little out there, as Kim says, you know. He's bipolar. Tricky thing to deal with. But hey, we got Trump. We could handle a bipolar president, right? Seriously. Or you could have Joe Biden, who's not bipolar. But I don't care what you say if you watch Joe Biden. Just watch a clip of Joe Biden 8 years ago. Don't kid yourself, something's missing there. And I'm not saying that because I want to be on the Trump thing of Sleepy Joe. He's not all there. You can see it. Not to mention when he was all there, everything he did should be anathema to people on the left. Crime bill in 94. Why so many black people are in prison right now? You know, Anita Hill, in the Clarence Thomas hearings, literally shot a black woman down, basically victim shame beyond victim shaming. His record ain't great, but you don't know his record because he hides out in a basement and only talks once in a while, and the media just says he's great. People are going to vote for Biden because he's the great unknown who's going to save us. Biden's got to come out of the basement at some point. And I don't know that he's going to hold up so well. Trump is fierce in the debate stage. Kanye's not going to win, but keep that conversation going. Do not bet against Trump right now. If Trump comes out and says, I am focused on rebuilding this country in a positive way, and shows that we're moving toward that in a positive way, he just might win re-election. Don't count on what the media tells you on any of this stuff, because they will fill you with their narrative, and it will literally make you think the world is one way when it's not. So we got, talk to me, Taylor. I'd like to see what happens when celebs who are behind canceling get canceled. I'm talking to you, Chrissy Teigen. Right. It's the reality is the cancel culture is turning on itself, right? The cancelers are getting canceled. And as the cancelers get canceled, that's what starts falling in on itself, because they're like, wait, I don't want to cancel myself. I don't want to hurt myself. So we got to stop canceling. Well, we cancel them, but we can't, which is why I think there's a massive force of people who are against all the cancel obsession, who feel like let people have a voice, talk, conversation, who are going, they're going to be platforms rising up. You know, if Facebook, Twitter, Instagram try to censor it down, other platforms will rise up. It will happen. It always has. Okay, let's get some people in on this conversation. We got some people waiting who've been waiting on the phone lines. Who wants to jump in first? I know we got a handful of people. You know, I'd actually, if somebody really wants to get in, wave your hand because Bruce can see you. If you're just jumping to say something. And if not, I'm going to pick somebody. So anybody down there, Bruce can see you all like lined up. You ready to talk? You got a comment? Something I said, push a button, made you want to say something? Stick your hand up. All right, we see one right there. There we go. What do we got, Jim?
Hey, Rob, how you doing?
Good.
Can you hear me? Good. Hey, yeah, great show. I'd like to get sort of your take back to the sort of the Black Lives Matter, the Portland, issue. What is it? What's your take on the government's role? Are they there simply because they're protecting federal property, or do they have any constitutional right to be there just because the president feels they need additional support and they can't protect their own citizens?
Yeah, well, I mean, so give me your quick answer. Not on that, but are you happy they're there? Are you happy Trump sent them?
So.
Your gut, not the law.
I'm happy they're there, because I assume if I lived in Portland, I'd be like, what the hell is, our mayor doing? And how come I can't go downtown? How come they're destroying my beautiful, city? And, obviously our police force, our leadership is inept. So I need help. We need help.
Right. So that's why they're there. They're there for political reasons. They're there because Trump wants to show that he will establish order for people like you. I really believe that. Legally, do they have a right to be there? Absolutely. And it's a defined right? If a state governor asks the feds to come in, they'll send them in. But the federal government has frequently sent troops in or National Guard in when they felt it was necessary. In this case, their argument will be, we are sending them in to protect federal property, which is why they stay around the federal buildings and the protesters come at the federal building. Like, stay away from the federal building. The feds will probably leave you alone. But, the feds have come in many instances. And the most famous was during the civil rights era when, Governor Wallace, a Democrat in Alabama, refused to let, segregation happen in the schools, integration happen. I mean, he wanted segregation. And Kennedy was like, we're sending in the National Guard and we are going to literally walk those kids past you. And we dare you to shoot on our national troops. So it's happened. It's happened other times. It's a great question. But, again, I think it's all comes down to politics. It's everything is politics. Everyone's move is political. This is Trump's political move to say, hey, I'm going to restore order and I'm done with you, Democratic governors and mayors who refuse to do it yourself. And I'm going to show you I'm the law and order guy. And that's how I see it. Anybody disagree with me on that? So I must have said something that pissed somebody off out there listening. Come on. One of you guys who's listening, who's a liberal. Who's a liberal who thinks what I said just is like total BS? Because I'm not super conservative, but I think what I said was a little more anti-Democrat than anti-Republican. Who we got to throw in the mix? Jim, you got a friend. Who's this? Mitch? Hey, Mitch. Can we hear you? Oh, Mitch was there and Mitch is gone. Mitch, you're going to have to log back in because you popped up and you went away. Who else we got? We got a guy named Corey there. Corey, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
We got Corey. Well, you there, Corey? We can't see you. Can you enable your camera?
Yeah, there we go.
There you are. Hey, Corey.
How you doing?
So everyone, so you know, I talked to Corey for a minute before the show, so it's not like I've never talked to him before, but not a whole lot. Corey, you're what, in your 20s, early 20s, mid 20s?
Yes, sir. 21.
So let me ask you straight up, what's your reaction as a young Black guy seeing what's going on? And I know from what you told me that you have a that you grew up in, was it in Cleveland or Cincinnati?
Cincinnati. Yes, sir. Cincinnati, Ohio.
Cincinnati. And in a really bad part of Cincinnati or a decent part of Cincinnati?
Nah, definitely not the decent part. Definitely the more rugged part of Cincinnati.
Right. So that's a nice way to say you grew up in a really bad neighborhood.
Yeah, for sure.
For people listening, what does that mean? Because I think, truthfully, Corey, a lot of white people, they have only a conception. I mean, I worked in gang prevention stuff. I've worked in inner cities. You know, I've spent time in it. I don't think most white people really have any idea. They just hear the news stories of shootings in neighborhoods. Like, give me just a quick picture of your neighborhood as a kid.
I mean, it's kind of on the base surface level. I mean, what you hear in the news and media, a lot of gangs, drugs, violence. But I mean, it's the lifestyle of oppressed people. So I mean, the way that the media presents it is like these people choose to live this lifestyle, and they have nothing better else to do when obviously oppression plays a huge part in it. And so, yeah, I mean, that's basically like the surface level of it.
Did you grow up, and I'm just going to ask you a few questions, and I want you to say what you want. Did you grow up feeling like the cops were your enemy, or like they were out to get you, whether they were Black, white, Latino, didn't matter, like sort of like they're not on our side?
So for the longest time, I actually did think that cops were not good people and there was only essentially white cops in my neighborhood. And there was a few instances when I was a kid where, they would, I don't know, maybe I'll see under remember if there was an actual search warrant, but I'm pretty sure there was not. But they just, take one of those SWAT baton things and just bust down your door now, point guns at everyone's head and telling everyone to get on the floor. So like from that perspective as a kid, like having these people be able to do whatever they want, like just to, I guess terrorize a home or a neighborhood, is just like, man, like why are you guys doing this? Like these are kids, no regards for like what they're, doing to these kids and their families, and like the lifestyle that they're like portraying, like, okay, I am the dominant person in the situation or the dominant race, and you're gonna do what I say. So
right.
I mean,
so given that, Corey, given that, so now you're more interacting in a more white environment, right?
Yeah.
You got white people around you. And be honest, like at a core level, when you see white people, I know you don't dislike all white people, but do you have a certain like kind of a resentment? It's kind of like you don't know what it was like, or you don't see what it is. I can't tell from the screen, but you look like you're, again, the lighting, but you look like you're pretty dark. Like you're not like, you wouldn't be like light skinned, right? Like
I'm not
dark. So people are going to see you, and white people have that reaction like, uh-oh.
Yeah. So for the most part, I really don't get into that mode unless a white person entices me, or like, just gives me a look, or say something that they have no understanding or, recollection or knowledge of, like, as someone who's like, if someone says like a complete, like ignorant, like comment or something like that, and I know that they have not experienced anything of that, so I mean, usually I don't, unless you entice me, then I'll like get that way. But
do you feel more comfortable around Black people than white people overall?
Of course. Yeah.
Right.
I mean, maybe that's just because, I grew up in that environment. Like I really resonate with people who, share the same experiences with me, but I generally get along with anyone, but I am more.
Yeah, no, I get that. And I'm asked that question for a reason, because I think it makes sense, right? Yeah. And on the same side, a lot of white people feel more comfortable around white people for the same reason. Not that ultimately we don't have to fix that, but we're sort of tribal at some level. We're comfortable with people who shared our experience. If I'm a white suburban person, I knew mostly white suburban people and maybe some Black suburban people, I'm comfortable around those people, Yeah. You get somebody from a different background and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I don't know if I relate to this. So I want to get other people in the conversation with us. But so your take on the whole BLM thing and the protests that keep going on. And I know you and Jim have had some, right? You guys have had some conversations on this. So And I'm guessing you don't always agree. So I'd love to hear, you know, where you guys differ on that. Because I think you got a young black guy and I don't want to say old, but, you know, we're going to certainly say he's like middle-aged white dude in the middle. So you know, share where you guys are respectively.
From my perspective, it's kind of frustrating because, like, I mean, like me and Jim just had a conversation maybe like an hour ago over a dinner. Like, this stuff happens every day, but like because I'm like, you know, he said I'd be viewed as an Uncle Tommy for some of my perceptions. He'd be viewed as a racist white guy because of his perceptions. But essentially, Black lives only matter when, like, you know, it's by the hands of a cop. But when really, like, this happens every day, whether it's a black guy or a white guy that takes the guy's life. But like, it seems that the media only, or the world really only cares when like if Black lives really mattered, we would get to the core of the situation, which is in the inner cities, and like really crack down on, you know.
Corey, that's a really good point. And, you know, I'm glad you bring it up because I think part of that is a narrative that the media drives. You know, Don Lemon on CNN got into it with Terry Crews, he's an actor and he's black, who said, look, we should be worried about all black lives, not just cop related. And Don Lemon was like, Black Lives Matter is just about police brutality. And I was kind of like, what? Because I think their narrative doesn't fit. We don't really want to go in and fix the inner cities. We don't really want to fix economic injustice and inequality. We just want to hammer on our opponents in an easy way. And this is, you know, easy target. But I think a lot of black people feel that. Go ahead. And anybody else who wants to jump in on this, just wave at Bruce and he'll pop you on the screen with us. Go ahead, Jeff.
I'll just cut to the chase. I mean, you know, Corey, you know, I don't mean to offend anybody, but you go to Facebook, right? And you can tell like who the freaking liberal is, right? They got a rainbow up if they care about gay people, right? They black out their page if they care about Black Lives Matter. They paint, you know, shit on the driveway because they care more. So my question to Corey is, at the end of the day, is any of this crap that all the people that care so much about you as a black man, is that going to change the life of an inner city family or inner city single mom one fucking bit?
That's why I was just like kind of just tired of the situation, just waiting on it to end. Because if I'm being honest, when it's all said and done, maybe there'll be something done about the police, maybe. But like in the life of an inner city black kid, life just goes on. That's why like most inner city kids don't really care about what's happening, because like it's not going to affect them directly. That's why they're not really out there marching. Like you might see black kids, but you can't really tell if they're suburban or from the inner city. Right. But like if like when I went home about like 2 months ago, most of my friends were just, you know, sitting at home, like not protesting. Right. And I understood why, though. You know,
you're right, Corey. I actually never thought of that because I was at a lot of the protests covering them in LA, and there were plenty of black people there, unlike Portland, where it's like all white people. But like, you're right, there weren't, you can tell. I talked to people, I tell by the way they were dressed. Most of them weren't definitely coming from like beat down communities, from you know, from impoverished communities. They were coming from like, you know, they were more typical LA. And I never thought that, but it's an interesting point because what, you know, does it really get in there? You guys stay up here with me. Let's bring up, we got a guy named Connor who jumped on a little before. Connor, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm glad you decided to show up in the muscle shirt to let us see, you know,
it's better than no hair, which is what I was doing before.
Connor, where are you on the conversation and the political spectrum? Are you left, right, independent? Don't take a side. What's your deal?
I mean, labels are labels. I would describe myself as being left of center.
Okay.
Most consistently. And also rude because I'm talking with my mouth full on this wonderful
you lefties are so rude, it's ridiculous, you know? No, okay, but I'm not a lefty or a righty either. I appreciate you not wanting to put a label on it. I only ask as most people do. Like I always say, I'm not left, I'm not right, I'm not center. I'm just trying to be an independent thinker. But politics come down more to the side of, say, opposite of a Donald Trump or a Republican.
Yeah, if let's say that, just to oversimplify this, if this were a soccer match in England, I'd be on the blue side.
Okay. And we'd all be in a brawl at the end.
I'm sorry?
And we'd all be in a brawl at the end. Okay.
Right. I'd probably be on the blue side.
So your reaction to what we're talking about, in particular, Jim kind of saying BS on some of this, but Corey kind of saying, no, I think there is a problem, but I don't think we're really addressing it. We're not really addressing the inequities that face, black people. We're just got a nice, colorful thing here called BLM, and let's all hammer on the police and put black squares on our Instagram and feel good about ourselves.
Yeah, that kind of public bandwagoning is ultimately not going to lead to any real change, which I think is what Corey's saying.
Yeah, that's a great word for it.
A lot of people that I know aren't necessarily putting a ton of stock in that because it really is a superficial show. For real change to address the issues that I think Corey alluded to and talked directly about are poverty and violence. And those are things that a square on my Instagram isn't going to do a lick to help, except for maybe getting more people aware of it, that's a good thing too.
But it doesn't get people more aware. That's my question. I mean, honestly, 14 people got shot in a funeral in Chicago the other day. The mainstream media didn't even cover it.
Yeah.
Like it happens every day, every weekend. Chicago, New York have set LA not as bad, but you see these homicide rates in the summer and the weekends. And there's no coverage of it. And if I lived in those communities, I'd be scared. I'd be like, I don't want my kid to get shot accidentally because two gangs are having a drive-by conflict. Right? Am I right about that, Corey?
Yeah, for sure, 100%.
Yeah. So Corey, if you go home on break, you go back to the inner city, right? Most of your friends, your family members are not making good decisions, right? They're not doing anything that's very productive. If you go to them and you say, hey guys, we should clean up our own community. We should tell who's selling the drugs. We should say who's robbing the stores, who's doing whatever. Are you going to get support, or are they going to tell you, just get lost?
I mean, there is a lot of shallow-minded people in the inner city, and it's just like that's basically going to a job and telling someone to quit their job in the sense, because that's their source of income, because they don't know anything else really. So I mean, you have to know what you got to understand and know your surroundings and know what you're getting yourself into. But there's a place to do it, but it's not just going out in the street and just saying that, because it's a dangerous place. And I mean,
and Jim, to some extent, it's easy for you, I'm going to pick on you here, to be a white dude who's well off, had a great upbringing, solid education, had everything. It's easy for people in our position to kind of go, I wouldn't have made those dumb choices. But you didn't grow up in an environment where those dumb choices were maybe the best to make.
You never heard me say that. I would never say that. In fact, Corey and I just had an hour and a half conversation at dinner where I specifically, right, Corey? I specifically said that maybe when I was younger, I would have said that, but we are all a product of our environment, right? I am, Connor, you, and someone who's raised in an inner city. I don't care what color you are, with no family, no nuclear family,
right?
No education. You're not gonna have the same options that I'm gonna have.
So the election was tomorrow. Jim, who do you vote for?
Trump.
Connor, who do you vote for?
Biden, baby.
Corey, who do you vote for?
I honestly couldn't tell you. I don't really see, and it goes back to me not really seeing that any of these issues being addressed with previous presidents. So I couldn't really tell you at the moment.
So do you vote for nobody? Do you vote for one or the other? Do you vote for Kanye? Would you vote for Kanye?
I mean, shoot, I can't. It would take, honestly, it's taking some thinking. I can't even give you a direct answer because I wouldn't be able to sit well with that. If I answered you right now, I'd be just not really satisfied with me giving you an answer. So,
but would you, and Jim and Connor, I want you guys to go at it for a second, but Corey, I've asked people this before. Would you feel like these issues might get better addressed if a black person was president? I mean, I know Obama was supposed to and he really didn't, but a lot of people thought he would, and maybe he was just too much of a mainstream candidate. I mean, do you feel like maybe Kanye, as crazy as it was, would actually try to do shit that the others wouldn't do because he doesn't care? He'd be like Trump bipolar, Trump who's black.
So, and I feel like you have to get somebody who sees, or like someone who, like, I would say like me, like you, they live that lifestyle, but they're they're kind of educated now and see the issues and for what they are, not just because, oh, let's give everybody money or every black person money because they're they're down and they're out. So
right,
but like people who like.
Sorry, I'm going to cut you off just for a second, just for time. And Connor, I want to hear you and Jim on the Biden Trump thing. But Corey, last question for you.
Yes, sir.
And I'm going to ask each of you this question. And Hazy's put up some Instagram stuff saying I would vote for Trump, but he has to sort his shit out, which I think is a valid point. Corey, one thing, if you were to be honest and you were to say the thing that bugs me about white people, and you're generalizing, I get that, is blank. And I know it's not all white people, but if you were with your friends, like the thing that bugs me about a lot of white people, we can say a lot of white people. And I'm going to ask Jim, you're going to have to say this about a lot of black people.
I would say exploitation and judgment.
About black people.
Yeah. Well, wait.
Judgment about black people.
You're asking me what I think generally about black people.
No, about white people.
Okay, yeah.
Did they exploit and judge black people?
Yeah.
Right. Jim, about black people. You've said before on the show you have stereotypes. I know you're not a racist, but you've admitted you have certain stereotypes. And one of them, what? You worked with a lot of black people at your trailer park, and you felt like what? That they what? I know it's a stereotype. I want to hear it.
No, well, first of all, I'm 100% committed to the idea, Rob, that when I was younger, I absolutely was judging an individual or a race, but now I'm judging the environment. So it's really a lost leader for me to go. I mean this, right? So the environment is what has to be corrected.
So I get it, but if a bunch of white people and black people showed up to work at your trailer park, you gave black people a chance, but felt like they didn't work as hard.
I honestly, I don't think of it that way.
Okay. I thought you said something like that before. I don't want to put words in your mouth. I thought you said they disappointed you and you had sort of expectations that you felt.
Yeah, I keep doing it because I'm an optimist. But I mean, yes, if I think about it statistically, they sue me left and right. They don't show up to work. I mean, there's problems, but it's not their fault. It's like, look, if I was raised without a father, if I was raised without friends, or without coaches, I would be irresponsible. I mean, I get it. A freaking book about how many people I've hired that literally lasted a week, 2 weeks. I'd bail people out of jail, and then they don't show up for work.
So my point in asking this, and Connor, you're not so much in this discussion with them in that regard, but you can jump in if you want. But my point is, I think we all have preconceptions. Maybe we just know why we have them, but we have them. And does that necessarily, maybe having that conversation is better than not? So my question to you, Corey, and to you too, Connor, isn't it better if the Jims of the world can say that and say, look, it's just my experience. I'm not saying I dislike black people. I just am saying in my experience, this happened more, that Corey can say, look, in my experience, white people judge me all the time. Like if we can't talk about it, how do we ever get to a point where we can work through it? If we're going to be told you can't say that, now you're a racist, put an X across your picture on the screen.
I agree 100%. If I can jump in there.
Yeah, please do, Connor, because as someone more on the left, my concern is that a lot of the movement this time around canceling out people's views has come from the left. The right's done it before, but it seems to come more from the left of center to be like silent people if they don't say the right thing.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I'm now a licensed professional psychotherapist in my state.
Okay.
So I'm about to bore you all with all this incredible knowledge about how the human mind works. And what I can tell you is that you have to have conversations, but to have effective conversations, you need safe space. And my understanding is that a lot of our fellow citizens who have grown up in poverty, have grown up in communities that are beset by violence, don't feel safe.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. So you can't expect a level playing field or a fair and open dialogue when half the people in the room can't feel safe. That's a problem.
Well,
that's a really good point.
Safe in his own street because he's getting shot at by his neighbor.
I mean, it's terrifying. And
yeah,
again,
well, two different. You got two different kinds of safe, right? Jim, you're talking about safe in a neighborhood. Connor, you're talking about safe in the dialogue, say black people with white people or poor people with rich people. Is that right?
There's no distinction at this point. They're the same conversation.
Got it. Let me address something real quickly. We got a Reddit user saying my blood pressure is rising. I just can't be here. That to me is part of the problem. Reddit Vicky Wick. You can't be in this conversation because it upsets you, but having a difficult, uncomfortable conversation is part of what's going to get us through forward. We're not going to go anywhere if we just all agree with everyone on our side and the other side agrees with everyone on their side. We all sit in our little camps all agreeing with ourselves until we clash. That's my view.
Yeah.
And Vicky saying really black and white work ethic, what the fuck? And I just want to say, I wasn't saying black people have a bad work ethic. That's the last thing I'm going to say. I was referencing Jim's experience with people, black people in his trailer park. What's that, Corey?
I was saying his preconceived judgment or knowledge.
Yeah. And, I don't think you can put a stereotype on all people. I just think we tend to have a habit of stereotyping people who aren't like us. So people who were raised differently than us economically, if they're of a different race, if they're from a different community, we tend to judge based on what we know and what we're comfortable with. And maybe, Connor, that's what you're saying. Like, we need to find a place to have a dialogue where everybody feels like we can have some kind of even playing field.
Yeah, I'm saying that the deck is stacked. There is a stilted playing field. That means that people who are on, let's say, the left side of this, particularly people on the left who are people of color, they don't have a level playing field to enter that conversation and feel safe. And the evidence of this are patterns across the country of police departments who have officers that have used excessive force consistently and have led to people who are supposed to feel safe in a community knowing that the police are looking out for them can't trust the police. That's a problem. So when we talk about all this coming down to this beautiful picture of two sides having a level-headed, balanced conversation of equals, there's a lot of structural change that has to occur for that to be able to happen meaningfully and lead to the next phase of our great republic.
And Jim, last comment from you, and then Corey, and then we're going to let Bruce see if we have some other comments from users. But go ahead.
With all respect to Connor, I have a question I'd love for him to answer. And Corey, if you can help him. I think this is part of the culture, the cancel culture. Connor, you pointed to two things, poverty and violence. Okay, Corey, you and I at dinner tonight, we talked about the idea that a young black person can't be safe in their own community. You wouldn't raise your family if you had options in one of these communities. So at some point, we have to make a decision. How do we keep these people safe, right? So you either have to remove the person who wants to be safe from the current shithole, okay? Or you have to remove the people that don't want to play by the rules so the people that do want to live in a safe, clean community have a chance.
I don't think you can't do that. It's not that simple. You can't just...
Then you're going to do nothing. Then you will just continue with the same shithole. Because right now you have people raping and pillaging and killing people, and we're not willing to arrest them. The black people that live in the communities aren't willing to, point the finger and say, that guy just shot this person, this guy's selling drugs, right? So we're not going to remove the bad people out of the community, and we're not going to take the people that want to move out of the community so they can go somewhere safe. Nothing matters until you have a clean, safe community. And we don't have the willpower as a society to raise our hand and say, if we want to help the inner cities, we have to make it just like the schools. We have to give them a clean, safe environment so they have a chance to raise a child who's not going to be, what is it, Corey? These kids get literally assaulted by these gangs, right? They get recruited and their life's over.
Okay, so Jim, we're running out of time. Corey, I want to let you respond to that. Connor, you can if you want. But again, clean, safe environment, everybody wants that. But the question is, how, if you do that by bringing police in and trying to just sort of do like we're going to do massive law and order, I think you'll get a backlash from those communities because they already don't trust the police.
But Rob, you guys are all smoking something. People are breaking the law. People are selling drugs. They're beating people up. They're robbing their neighbors. They're killing each other. And you're trying to be politically correct. Get them the fuck out of the community so they have a chance to live and raise their family without getting killed or having someone sell drugs to their 8-year-old.
Corey, Connor, you lived in one of those communities, so you go to it first.
So it's definitely a mixture of both sides. Like, there is corruption in the police force. I know this for a fact. Like there is that. So eventually, one way or another, that the police force needs to be deconstructed. But also, like Jim said, we don't trust the police, and that's just they ruined that trust. I mean, between the citizen and people who are supposed to protect us. But I mean, yeah, that's what we were just talking about as the solution to like just move these people out who want to be moved out, but like we have no chance or point or way of getting there, like, or the resources. So
it does seem like we're a little stuck on this. And again, Jim, I get it. I'm not saying I think these inner city communities have problems internally that need to be addressed. I just think it's not as simple as you can't just go in and like root people out, and you can't just lift everybody out of the community. I mean, some level you have to rebuild the communities and create a dialogue. And yes, you have to be able to enforce the law and rules in those communities, which does require police, but police who are at least community trained. In every big city, you hear the same story of how police and communities have operated, and it's not a great story. It's, Connor, you have a thought on this, and then I got to wrap it up.
Yeah, quickly. It's policing is one small part of a much bigger, more complicated system. And so when you take a look at environment, Jim, and you say that it's the environment that contributes to people's growth and well-being and overall productivity in society, taking some drug dealers and bad guys out of a neighborhood isn't going to make the neighborhood able to put food with you.
Mm-hmm.
You got to do both. You have to do both,
and have a safe school that's full of committed teachers that are giving real important,
deeper, more systemic problems. Hey, Corey, quickly, someone has a question for you.
Yeah, I was going to answer that.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Talk to me, Taylor, on this, like being if you will, a victim of like the vicious cycle. On the surface, I feel like it's getting people to talk about it more. The Black Lives Matter movement, and like what's for like the world, if not the nation, is getting a small glimpse, like a very small glimpse of what goes on in the inner city communities, or just in Black people in general. It's not just about the inner city communities, but like Black lives. But like I was saying earlier, we're scratching the surface with this police brutality, because that's basically what it's about. It only involves police brutality. So
right, and it's got to go deeper.
Part, no, it's been effective for certain areas in the Black Lives Matter movement, but like as Black living, no, not really.
So you guys, thank you so much, Corey. And by the way, anybody watching, we're all just individuals with viewpoints. But so I don't speak for all guys in my position. Corey doesn't speak for all young Black guys who grew up in an inner city. Connor doesn't speak for all, whatever, each of us, you get my point. But that said, we do bring unique perspective, and I appreciate that perspective, because I guarantee you Corey speaks for more people in that community than you do if you're not in that community. And there's always going to be different perspectives from within any community. There's going to be someone who's going to disagree with Corey. I've met some of those people, but I think it's the only way we go anywhere is if we start letting more voices come out and say what's not just in the mainstream narrative that's coming from, I don't care if it's from CNN or Fox. It's just the mainstream media narrative about how they want us to look at these issues. And so I really appreciate you guys kind of sharing your personal perspectives and kind of trying to help me kind of create a bigger picture for all of us. So thanks again. And please call in again. I love this conversation. I hope it was great for you guys.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Rob.
You're welcome. Hey, Bruce, we're just about out of time. But Bruce, quickly, do we have there's Jim. Bruce, you there? I'm here. Hey, there's Jim. We're bouncing. Okay. See you, Jim. Bye-bye. I was trying to get Bruce up here, but I don't know where he is, so I'm just going to be up here. There he is. There's the man. You're on the Space Force there. Dude, we only have a minute left, but we had some interesting interactivity from Reddit and from Reddit and Instagram, yeah? Because I know we're all trying to create a conversation, so let's just take 20 seconds and talk about that with people. We want people to be what? We're on how many platforms now?
9, 10, Ustub, Reddit, Instagram, Twitch, Periscope, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, every major one that I could think of.
and people can get in on the show. We put a link out. You can take that link just like the callers did. You log in, you sit, and we pop you and your camera and phone up. If you want to just put on audio, you can do that, right?
Yep. And then for anyone who wants to join in future shows, that link will be down below, the join.robnelsonlive.com/now. You'll be able to come on screen and join our other callers every time we're on Wednesday and Friday.
And we love the feedback we're getting. I don't always get to answer it all, but I'm going to try to spend more time doing it after the fact with people. If you have done it, Bruce and I are really trying. Despite the look of it, we're not like a mega studio. I know it looks like Bruce has got like the CNN Fox thing all himself, but that's the magic of green screen. My background is a natural. I'm an all natural. I don't do implants like Bruce. But I appreciate everybody watching. This was a really provocative conversation. Yeah, Bruce, right? It was interesting, right? And Bruce is the whitest Latino I know. And I don't mean white personality. I mean, he just always looks so pasty on screen for a Latino. But we didn't have a Latino in the group, but Bruce, interesting, right? Interesting perspective, even if you're rational about it.
I agree too. Kind of like Vicky said, and I'm talking with her on Reddit as I'm talking with Taylor and Hazy11 Hazy on Instagram. Vicky says, and I totally agree with her, there are many levels to this, and I totally agree with her. But I like the fact that we get to scratch the surface, but there is so much more that we could talk about. But I'm just glad there's like an open, independent medium or place where everyone can come together and, talk from different sectors of life, essentially.
Yep. That's it. All right, let me give my last thoughts to people. So everybody, thank you for watching the show. Again, what Bruce said, ditto times 100, right? Like, this is a forum to have a conversation. That's what I'm trying to do. You can disagree with me. You can agree with me. You see, I get into it. I'm passionate. I mean, look, I'm even shining up here now. I've been working my way up in the humidity. But it's all about creating that conversation. I want the voices in. There's no right or wrong necessarily. We're going to figure it out. You may totally disagree with what I said. That's fine. I want people to say what they think. I want to have a conversation where we're not afraid to talk. Because as I started out saying, fear is what's going to get us most. Whether it's fear of COVID, fear of Trump, fear of the Democrats, fear that they're going to take over, socialism is going to take over, fear of black people, fear of Black Lives Matter. It doesn't matter. All that fear is just making us nutty. And we're going to break through that fear by just finding a way to talk about it. Whether it's protest, Black Lives Matter, rebuilding inner cities, or wearing masks. We just got to start being willing to have actual open conversations. Everybody, thanks for watching. I'm Rob Nelson. This is Rob Nelson Live. And please share this with your friends if you liked it. I want to build an audience and build a conversation. Thanks for watching.